Hello and welcome to Lesson 5, Cognition and Development of Social Cognition. So far we have been looking at what are these innate abilities or early developmental abilities that children, infants, possess. We've looked at a Piagetian approach which says that we develop knowledge through schemas, accommodation and assimilation, but characteristics of certain developmental stages such as egocentrism, object permanence. Then we looked at Vygotsky, who challenges this and says that language tends to drive development, and he talks about his own proximal development of how we move from a task that we can achieve easily on our own to a task that we can then achieve a more advanced task on our own without help via scaffolding. Then we looked at violation of expectation research, which seemed to suggest that babies at a much younger age have these quite advanced cognitive abilities such as object permanence, such as physical understanding of the physical world, that solid objects can't move through each other and so forth. And what we're going to look at today is the next step, which is, okay, understanding of the natural world. Now we're looking at understanding of the social world. So social cognition is the process of thinking and interpreting social information. Social information is any information you receive in a social setting. Perspective taking is key here and refers to the ability to consider situations from someone else's perspective. Selman's levels of perspective taking is the first model we're going to look at, and it was developed by Robert Selman, who argues that perspective taking is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to view a situation from their perspective. And he uses a series of dilemmas to help illustrate at which stage different children are currently at. This may remind you of Kohlberg's stages of moral development, and it has a very similar vibe with the dilemmas. So Holly is an 8-year-old girl who likes to climb trees. She is the best tree climber in town. One day she's climbing a tree and she falls from a low branch. She doesn't hurt herself, but her dad sees it and he freaks out. And he makes Holly promise that she will never climb a tree again. Later that day, Holly and her friends meet Sean. Sean's little kitten is stuck up a tree. She's the only one who can save him because she's the best tree climber in town. So, she remembers though that she made a promise to her dad that she should not climb the tree. That's the scenario. Pause it, have a read through again, and then we'll go on to the stages. So, according to Selman, depending on what level or what stage the child or the adult is at will depend on their ability to take different types of perspectives in this scenario. So the first scenario, the first stage is the undifferentiated perspective. This is where we understand that you are separate from me. We understand that people are separate, but we have an egocentric approach. So in Piaget's 3 mountain task, remember the child knows that I'm different, I'm not part of them, I'm a separate individual, but they assume that I can see the world from their perspective, an egocentric perspective. So imagine the question, do you think Holly's father would tell her off? Someone who has this egocentric, undifferentiated perspective might say, no, he'd be happy that Sean got his kitten back. The child at this stage doesn't know that the father doesn't know anything about the kitten. Doesn't know about the kitten, so he doesn't know about the motivations. But they assume because they know about the motivations that the father should know as well, and therefore that's the logical interpretation of what they might do. The next stage then, social information perspective taking. This is where children are aware of perspectives that are different from their own, but they assume this is because they have different information. So at this point in the 3 mountains task, the child knows that the person on the other side can see something different, and the reason why they can't see what they're seeing is because they have different information. So do you think Holly's father would tell her off? Now they work out that Holly's father might tell her off because he doesn't know about the kitten. So actually they're putting themselves into the position of Holly's dad and saying, well, he might do this because he lacks information. The next stage, self-reflective perspective taking. This is where the child can now view their own thoughts and feelings from someone else's perspective and recognise that others do the same. So, does Holly think she'll be punished? No. Holly thinks her father will understand if she explains it. So they recognise he has different information, but also they can put themselves in the father's position and say, well, he'll probably forgive her because she did it for good reasons. Mutual perspective taking, this is where the child or young person can pull themselves outside and adjudicate on two independent individuals. So imagine in this scenario, they can act as a third impartial party and judge both the perspectives. So they can see it from the child's and the dad's from an objective perspective. Does Holly think she'll be punished? No, because Holly thought she ought to help Sean. Her father would only punish her if he thought that Holly had done something for bad reasons. So if she had broken the promise just because she wanted to climb a tree for fun. And then we move on to this societal perspective taking. Personal decisions are now made with reference to social conventions. Does Holly think she'll be punished? No, it's important to help others, and she did the right thing. She did what was a social norm to help others. So in this case, she's not just referencing, or the child is not just referencing the father and Holly. They've brought society into it now. What is normal behaviour? And Holly is adhering to that, therefore she won't be punished. We move through these different stages according to Selman based on experience. Now, interestingly, there is a strong relation here to deception. One of the things that this ability to look at a situation from someone else's perspective is it allows us actually to implant false beliefs in someone else's minds. We can usually achieve this by about the age of 3, and Cole found that children around 3 years old could hide their disappointment, for example, when they received the worst present. They're given two possible presents, one's the best, one's the worst, they receive the worst. When other people are around, children are good at masking their disappointment. So they say, thank you. But when they're filmed secretly, they show their disappointment. This shows that they can deceive others. Why are they not demonstrating disappointment? Because they understand the social norm that when you are given a gift, or perhaps not a social norm, but they can put themselves in the position, the giver, and they don't want to upset the giver by looking disappointed. Parenting style. So Hoffman has argued that the development of perspective taking is related to parenting style. Some parents actively encourage children to take a victim perspective. Think about how they would have felt, and I've certainly done this with my own children by saying, how would you feel if someone did that to you? Fitzgerald and White examined relationship between victim-centered discipline, where you say, now I want you to think about how the other person feels, and perspective taking. Each child was then interviewed to assess their parenting style. There was a correlation between the VCD and parenting style generally. So this suggests that we learn this through experience. Selman then. His original research took a cross-sectional sample of 225 participants, ages ranging from 4.5 right up to 32 years of age. In the first analysis conducted 2 years later, 48 boys were re-interviewed. It was found that 40 of the boys had made gains in their level of perspective. None regressed back to an earlier state. This suggests that we are learning and developing perspective taking through experience, and that progress is age related. That's why it's linear, that's why it's always improving and never slides back. This may be related though to Piaget's stages, so it's possible that you can only achieve a certain level of perspective taking once you've reached a certain level of cognitive development. Negative correlated to antisocial behaviour. So one of the most interesting findings is perspective taking skills are important to social behaviour and pro-social behaviour. These are good behaviours. Selman et al. Found that children who were poor in this perspective taking had more difficulty in forming and maintaining social relationships. They were also less popular because they would snatch a toy and not understand how that would affect you and that you would be upset by that. They were egocentric. And we can actually make this huge synoptic link. Remember, when we were talking about criminal justice and we were looking at restorative justice, one of the applications for this type of perspective taking training almost is the restorative justice program. That is designed to get the offender to view the situation, the crime, from the perspective of the victim. Moreover, we've got this understanding that some criminals can't empathise, they lack empathy, psychopaths for example. Therefore, that's more evidence that perspective taking is linked to pro-social behaviour and failure to do so is linked to anti-social behaviour. Okay. However, we have to be careful. Correlation doesn't always mean causation. So much of the research is correlational. Correlations do not mean that perspective-taking skills cause higher social competence or pro-social behaviour. It may be the other way around. So you may have higher social competence and that's why you develop better perspective-taking. And a nice little correlation here is between autism and organic food sales. We've got to be careful which way around this relationship goes, or even if it is a relationship at all. Real world applications then. One of the key goals of primary schools, according to Selman, is to instill within children the ability to take other people's perspectives. Evidence suggests that this can be improved through experience and skills training. Has implications for prisons, schools, and there is a program called Social Skills Training. Google it. This is where children, especially older children who tend to have behavioural problems or mental disorders, are taught how to take other people's perspectives. And it may overall help promote empathy, which could reduce crime and offending behaviour, as well as other antisocial behaviour as well. Right. Finally, one of the most interesting developments is online interaction. So you'll spend more of your time online now than ever before, and perspective taking is a relatively concrete concept. So I understand if I've hurt you, that I can sit there, look at your face, I can see you're sad and interpret how you would feel. However, this is much harder to demonstrate online. So think about the trolling culture. Someone logs onto your Twitter or your Facebook and leaves a nasty message about you. There's not the same understanding necessary if we fire this out there that this will have X effect. I can't put myself in your perspective, and actually I might not even care to, because we may both be anonymous, and therefore this has implications for online interactions. So I think one of the really interesting areas of research is going to be how people can be encouraged to take the perspective of others online to improve their social interactions. So that is Selman's work. It's hopefully a little more concrete and grounded than some of the other cognition and development studies that we've looked at. As always, if you have any questions, you know where I am. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you around. Bye.